All right, let's talk about the golden ratio. You know that Greek letter phi? It's about 1.618, but it's more than just a number though, right? This proportion seems to pop up everywhere, from seashells and galaxies to, well, we'll see. Today, we're diving deep into the golden ratio. We'll be exploring its presence in art, nature, and even, get this, the stock market.
It's fascinating, isn't it, how this seemingly simple proportion, this golden ratio, has captivated mathematicians and artists and scientists, really, for centuries.
Yeah. So to refresh everyone's memory, what exactly the golden ratio?
It's this idea that, well, if you divide a line in a specific way, you get this special ratio. So you divide it so that the longer part is to the shorter part, the same way the whole line is to the longer part. And that ratio, that's the golden ratio, approximately 1.618, and it has some really unique mathematical properties.
Okay, I kind of get it, but can you break that down a bit more, maybe visually?
Sure, imagine a rectangle, but not just any rectangle, one where the length and width are in this golden ratio. Now divide that rectangle into a square and a smaller rectangle. And guess what? That smaller rectangle, its dimensions, also in the golden ratio. It's like this perfect nesting doll situation. You can keep doing this infinitely, creating this beautiful pattern of squares and golden rectangles.
Whoa, that's pretty cool. So it's like those Russian nesting dolls, but with rectangles.
Exactly. This self-similarity is a big part of what makes the golden ratio so visually appealing. But it's more than just pretty pictures. There's some real math going on here.
I bet. We're talking about math that's been around for centuries.
Yeah.
Did someone just, stumble upon this magical ratio?
It's hard to pinpoint exactly who discovered it first, but its roots, they go way back to ancient cultures. They were likely aware of this proportion, especially through shapes like the pentagram and the pentagon. Think of all that ancient art and architecture.
Right. All those star shapes and five-sided figures, they were everywhere.
Precisely. And the golden ratio is deeply connected to those shapes. Early mathematicians, maybe even the Pythagoreans, probably recognized the unique qualities of this ratio, even if they didn't call it the golden ratio back then.
I mean, they were pretty smart cookies. Didn't they believe that everything could be explained with numbers?
They did, and their obsession with geometry might just have led them to the golden ratio. We can't forget Euclid, though. He really formalized things.
Right. Euclid and his famous elements. Didn't he write about the golden ratio in there?
Absolutely. Elements is considered one of the most important mathematical texts ever. It laid the foundation for geometry as we know it, and right there in the text, he defines the golden ratio. It paved the way for centuries of exploration in math and art.
So Euclid gave it a name and brought it into the academic world. Makes sense. But how did the golden ratio become this almost mythical concept? It's more than just a definition in a textbook, right?
Well, there's one name you can't ignore when talking about the golden ratio's rise to fame: Fibonacci.
Ah, yes, Fibonacci, that famous sequence, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8. You add the previous two numbers to get the next one. Simple, yet it appears everywhere in nature.
It's remarkable, isn't it? And here's the thing. The ratio between consecutive Fibonacci numbers, like 32, 53, 85, as the sequence goes on, they get closer and closer to the golden ratio. It's this unexpected link between a simple numerical pattern and this seemingly universal proportion.
Wow, that's mind-blowing. But I'm curious, this phi, this 1.618, are there other cool things about it mathematically?
There is one that I particularly enjoy: phi squared. It equals phi plus 1. It might seem simple, but it has boggled mathematicians for ages.
Wait, really? So you're saying 1 plus 2 set here, 2 1 3 is 2.618039874991 1 plus phi 5 2 plus 1.
You got it. It hints at a deeper connection between the golden ratio and other mathematical concepts. It's part of what makes phi so special, mathematically speaking.
So we've got ancient geometry, Fibonacci sequences, and cool mathematical properties. But how did all of this translate into art and architecture? Did people actually build things using this ratio?
Now, that's a question that has sparked endless debate. Some claim that ancient structures, like the Great Pyramid of Giza, were designed using the golden ratio.
Oh, right, like the ratio of the pyramid's height to its base. Pretty amazing if true.
It's a captivating idea, but the evidence is, shall we say, less than concrete. Measurements from way back then can be inaccurate, and some argue it's a bit of a cherry-picking situation, choosing specific measurements to fit the theory, like connecting the dots, you see. You can make a lot of different pictures depending on which dots you choose.
So healthy skepticism is needed when it comes to those ancient claims. What about more recent history? Did artists and architects embrace the golden ratio in, say, the Renaissance?
They did, and that's where things get really interesting. During the Renaissance, there was a renewed interest in classical art and math, and the golden ratio took center stage.
Was it because of Luca Pacioli and his book Divina Proporzione? The Divine Proportion, that's quite a name.
Exactly. He believed the golden ratio was a manifestation of divine beauty and harmony. And he wasn't alone. Leonardo da Vinci, one of the greatest Renaissance minds, was also fascinated by it.
Right, Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man. That image of a man perfectly inscribed within a circle and a square. It's supposedly based on the golden ratio.
It is. It's this perfect blend of mathematics and art, capturing the ideal human form. Da Vinci definitely saw something special in this ratio.
Makes you wonder if he used it in other famous works, like the Mona Lisa.
It's certainly possible. A lot of Renaissance artists were obsessed with perspective and proportion. The golden ratio was like a framework for creating visually harmonious compositions.
So it went from a geometrical curiosity to, like, a tool for understanding beauty. It jumped from the textbook to the canvas.
Precisely. And this influence continued through art history. Think of Albrecht Dürer. He was a master of perspective and geometry. He studied the golden ratio meticulously and incorporated those principles into his work.
Right. Dürer was all about precision and mathematical principles in art. I could definitely see how the golden ratio would appeal to him. But did this fascination continue into more modern art? Or did it fade away with the Renaissance?
It didn't fade away. Even in the 20th century, artists like the Cubists, known for their abstract geometric paintings, were incorporating mathematical concepts into their work. And there's still debate about whether they use the golden ratio in their compositions.
So even in abstract art, where it's less about realistic representation, this ancient ratio might be hiding in plain sight. It's amazing how this one concept connects ancient philosophers to Renaissance masters to modern artists.
It really is, but the golden ratio story goes beyond human creations. It's a mode in nature, too.
Oh, right. The Fibonacci sequence and its connection to the golden ratio. But tell me more about how this ratio manifests in the natural world. It's not like trees are carrying around calculators.
That's what makes it so fascinating, right? From the spirals of seashells to how leaves are arranged on a stem, it appears in the very patterns of growth and development.
Wow. So we have this number that shows up in math, art, and nature. That's pretty impressive.
It speaks to its versatility. It connects seemingly unrelated fields. And it raises a big question. Is this just a coincidence, or is there something deeper at play, some fundamental principle?
That's what I want to find out. Is the golden ratio some cosmic coincidence, a human invention, or something else entirely?
Let's delve deeper into the world of nature and see what other secrets the golden ratio holds.
All right, lead the way. I'm ready to fall down this golden ratio rabbit hole.
All right, let's venture beyond the human-made and dive into the realm of nature. We've mentioned the Fibonacci sequence and its connection to the golden ratio, but there's so much more to explore. Nature is full of these golden ratio examples, from the microscopic all the way to the cosmic scale.
Okay, I'm ready for more. We talked about those sunflowers and seashells earlier, but what else is there? Give me some mind-blowing examples.
Okay, how about something we see every day? Plants. Have you ever really looked at the way leaves are arranged on a stem? It's called phyllotaxis. And guess what? This arrangement often follows a pattern based on, that's right, the golden ratio.
You mean the angle between one leaf and the next has something to do with phi? That's wild.
Mhm.
But why? Why would plants care about the golden ratio?
Well, think about it. It's all about efficiency. By arranging their leaves in a spiral pattern that aligns with the golden ratio, plants are able to maximize their exposure to sunlight. Each leaf gets its fair share. None of them are completely shaded out by the others.
Ah, so it's like nature's way of optimizing for solar energy. That's pretty clever.
It is, right. And it's not just about sunlight. This arrangement also helps with things like water runoff and making sure there's good air circulation around the plant.
Wow. So much going on and something we usually just walk right by. What other examples are there that really blow your mind?
Well, let's go big. Some astronomers believe that the spiral arms of galaxies, yeah, galaxies, those might actually exhibit proportions close to the golden ratio.
Wait, hold on. Galaxies. Are we really talking about the same ratio that determines how leaves are arranged on a tiny little plant? That's kind of incredible.
It is pretty incredible. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Is there some deeper principle at work here? Maybe some underlying mathematical harmony that connects, well, everything. The small stuff and the really big stuff.
It's like the universe is talking to us in this secret mathematical language, and the golden ratio is like one of its key phrases. But what about animals? Does the golden ratio pop up there too?
Of course. You know those beautiful nautilus shells with their spiral shape? As a nautilus grows, it adds new chambers to its shell. Each chamber is bigger than the last, but the proportions stay the same. And, you guessed it, that ratio between those chamber sizes, it's usually really close to the golden ratio.
So the Nautilus isn't just growing, it's growing in this amazingly elegant mathematical way. It's like it has some built-in understanding of proportion and harmony.
Yeah. And it goes beyond just shells. Some really cool research has shown golden ratio proportions and all kinds of things in the animal world. Body shapes, patterns on butterfly wings, even the arrangement of certain molecules. It's everywhere.
I'm starting to see golden ratios everywhere I look now.
Mm-hmm.
But this kind of brings us back to that big question, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Is all of this just a giant coincidence?
Mm-hmm.
Or is there something more profound going on here?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And honestly, there's no easy answer. Some really smart scientists think that the fact that the golden ratio is so common in nature points to some fundamental principle, some kind of mathematical blueprint for, well, everything. But then others will tell you it's just evolution doing its thing, natural selection favoring efficient and symmetrical forms. Maybe things that grow in golden ratio proportions just happen to be better at surviving.
A cosmic blueprint. Or just evolution. That's a tough one.
Yeah, it is. But that's what makes the natural world so fascinating, right? It's full of these complex mysteries. And, maybe we'll never have a definitive answer, but the point is, the very act of searching for answers, of asking these questions, well, that's what helps us understand the world around us and appreciate how incredibly beautiful and intricate it all is.
Like they say, the journey matters just as much as the destination, right? But speaking of journeys, we've talked a lot about art and nature. What about all those other claims about the golden ratio showing up in things like music and even literature? Now, remember that wild one from earlier, the stock market?
Yes. Those are areas where the debate gets even more heated. They're much more subjective for sure. But let's explore those intriguing possibilities next. See if we can sort out what's real and what's maybe just wishful thinking.
All right, sounds good. Lead the way. I'm ready for more. Okay, so we've covered art, architecture, and even nature. Now, what about those more unconventional claims about the golden ratio? Music, literature, even the stock market.
Yeah, those are definitely areas where things get a little fuzzier. The golden ratio's presence in these fields is, let's just say, hotly debated, but they're definitely worth exploring. Let's start with music.
All right, music. I'm intrigued. It's not like composers are out there with rulers measuring notes, are they?
No rulers involved. But some music theorists suggest that, well, maybe the golden ratio can be found in the relationships between musical intervals.
Intervals, like the distance between two notes. How could the golden ratio possibly relate to that?
Well, certain intervals, like the perfect fifth or the major sixth, have frequency ratios that are surprisingly close to the golden ratio. And some folks believe that these particular intervals sound especially pleasing to our ears because of this connection to this, well, harmonious proportion.
So maybe it's not all just subjective taste. Maybe our ears are sort of naturally drawn to these intervals because of, underlying math.
It's an interesting thought, isn't it? And it goes beyond just individual intervals. Some composers, especially during the Baroque period, are said to have actually structured their compositions using the golden ratio. Think about things like where they place the climax of a piece, the lengths of different sections, even the number of bars, all potentially influenced by this ratio.
Wow, are we saying that, Bach was secretly a math whiz, using the golden ratio to craft his masterpieces? That's pretty wild.
It's definitely a possibility. I mean, we may never know for sure, but the idea that composers throughout history, either consciously or unconsciously, use the golden ratio in their work is pretty fascinating. And this whole connection extends to the instruments themselves, too.
Really? How so?
Well, the proportions of instruments like violins or pianos, those might have been influenced by the golden ratio as well, contributing to both their aesthetic beauty and also their unique acoustic qualities.
So the golden ratio could be shaping the way we experience music on all these different levels, from the actual sounds to the way instruments are built. It's mind-blowing. Okay, what about literature? How could the golden ratio possibly be connected to something as abstract as, words and stories?
It's definitely a more subjective area, I'll grant you that. But some literary analysts have examined the structure of poems and novels, looking for golden ratio proportions in the number of lines, stanzas, chapters, things like that. Of course, it's not as simple as measuring physical dimensions, right?
Right. Literature's all about meaning, not just, how many words are on a page.
Yeah.
How on earth would you even go about measuring something like that with a mathematical ratio?
It's tricky, for sure. More open to interpretation, you could say. But there's this idea that the golden ratio might be related to the rhythm and flow of language. The arrangement of words and sentences, if it aligns with the golden ratio, could maybe create a sense of balance of pleasing proportions within a literary work.
Hmm, interesting. So are we saying that, like, Shakespeare was secretly a math nerd using the golden ratio to write his sonnets? I don't know about that one.
Uh-huh, probably not. But it's a fun thought, right? But on a more serious note, I think it speaks to this human desire to find order and beauty in everything around us, even something as complex as language.
I totally get that.
Yeah.
But we can't forget about that last one, the stock market. You mentioned earlier that some people believe the golden ratio influences market cycles, right?
Yeah, that's right. Some financial analysts are convinced that market trends actually follow patterns based on the Fibonacci sequence, which, as we know, is closely tied to the golden ratio. There's even a whole stock market analysis technique called the Elliott wave principle that uses Fibonacci ratios to try and predict how the market will move in the future.
So is the golden ratio like the secret to getting rich quick? Should I
Uh-huh.
start studying geometry instead of, financial reports?
Haha, if only it were that simple. The stock market is a notoriously complex and unpredictable beast. And while those patterns based on the golden ratio and the Fibonacci sequence might offer some interesting insights, they're definitely not a foolproof formula for financial success.
Yeah, I think I'll stick to my day job for now. Still, it's pretty amazing to think that there might be this connection between the golden ratio and something as, well, chaotic as the stock market.
It really is. And I think it underscores the point that the golden ratio isn't just some abstract concept locked away in math textbooks. It has the potential to connect with all aspects of our lives, even those that seem, on the surface, to be far removed from things like geometry or proportion.
So after this incredible deep dive, where do we even begin to answer that big question? Is the golden ratio some universal law of nature? Is it something humans invented? Or is it something else entirely?
Honestly, I think that's the beauty of it all. The golden ratio remains this incredible source of mystery and wonder. And who knows, we may never have all the answers. But it's that journey of exploration, that pursuit of understanding, that makes it so captivating.
Right. Whether it's a fundamental constant of the universe or just a product of how we perceive the world,
Yeah.
it makes us look for patterns, see beauty in unexpected places, and appreciate how everything is connected, even things that seem completely different at first glance.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, thank you so much for guiding us through this fascinating deep dive into the golden ratio. It's been a wild ride. And to our listeners, thanks for joining us. Keep your eyes open, your minds curious, and who knows, maybe you'll stumble upon the golden ratio in your own little corner of the universe. Until next time, keep exploring.